My beloved child. Do not rush past these words. Something has shifted in the unseen story surrounding two hearts, and what you are about to hear was meant to find you at this exact moment. There are moments when a person can hide from their feelings, distract themselves with noise, bury their thoughts beneath responsibilities, and pretend that tomorrow will make everything easier. But then there comes a moment when the heart refuses to cooperate with the disguise. A moment when silence becomes louder than conversation. A moment when someone finally understands that what they feel cannot remain undefined forever. And in this fictional message of divine reflection, that moment has arrived for your soulmate. There is big news surrounding this connection, but the news is not simply that they have been thinking about you. Their thoughts have traveled much further than that. They have made a promise concerning you, and the seriousness behind that promise is what changes the emotional atmosphere of this story. This was not a careless sentence spoken during a temporary wave of emotion. It was not something said because they were lonely. It was not an impulsive declaration designed to sound beautiful for one night. Something deeper happened. Something forced them to confront the difference between merely wanting someone and being willing to become the kind of person who can truly stand beside them. For a long time, your soulmate may have believed there would always be more time. More time to understand their emotions. More time to overcome hesitation. More time to say what remained unsaid. More time to correct misunderstandings. More time to become brave. Human hearts often behave this way. They postpone honesty because honesty changes things. They postpone decisions because decisions close certain doors. But lately, the thought of continuing to postpone what matters has begun to disturb them more than the possibility of finally facing it. And this is where the story becomes more intimate. There was a quiet moment recently, not dramatic on the outside, perhaps not noticeable to anyone else, when your soulmate found themselves thinking about you differently. They were not imagining some perfect fantasy. They were remembering details. The small things. The things people remember only when someone has reached a deeper place inside them. A conversation. A certain expression. Something you once said without realizing how long it would remain in their memory. Perhaps even the way you carried yourself during a difficult moment when they expected you to fall apart. And something inside them whispered, I did not understand this person when I had the chance. That realization stayed. They tried to move away from it mentally, but it followed them. Because once the heart recognizes something important, distraction becomes temporary. There is a difference between missing someone and realizing their value. Missing someone can happen because of familiarity. But recognizing value changes the way a person examines their own behavior. Your soulmate began asking questions that were uncomfortable. Did I truly listen? Did I assume too much? Did I protect my pride instead of protecting something meaningful? Did I expect understanding while failing to offer the same understanding in return? Did I keep waiting for certainty when the connection itself was asking me to become courageous? One question became especially difficult to escape. What if I lose something extraordinary because I was afraid to treat it seriously? And that question opened a door. Child, the promise came after this realization. Not before. That matters. Because promises made before awakening can be emotional. Promises made after awakening carry responsibility. Imagine them alone for a moment. The room is quiet. The distractions have faded. Perhaps they are sitting near a window, lying awake, driving somewhere familiar, or simply staring at something without really seeing it. Their mind is somewhere else entirely. It is with you. But instead of replaying only the beautiful possibilities, they are confronting themselves. They are remembering the distance, the hesitation, the things they should have explained, the moments when they allowed uncertainty to speak louder than affection. And then something changes. Their thoughts stop asking, "What do I want?" They begin asking, "Who do I need to become?" That is where the promise begins. Your soulmate has made a promise within this story that they will no longer allow fear, outside voices, old disappointments, or their own emotional confusion to make every decision for them. They have begun to understand that if something is precious, it cannot constantly be placed at the mercy of temporary emotions. If someone matters, that person should not be left forever trying to interpret silence. But there is another layer. Because the promise was not simply, "I will choose you." It went deeper than choosing. They promised themselves that if they ever receive the opportunity to stand before you with honesty, they will not approach you with empty words. They will come differently. More aware. More accountable. More prepared to say what they mean and mean what they say. That is why they are serious. They know words alone may not impress you anymore. And perhaps that realization is one of the most powerful changes occurring inside them. There may have been a time when they assumed affection was enough. They may have believed that if feelings were real, everything else would eventually solve itself. But maturity teaches something different. Love without courage becomes longing. Love without communication becomes confusion. Love without consistency becomes a question mark. And your soulmate is beginning to understand that a meaningful connection requires more than intense emotions hidden behind silence. Something must be demonstrated. Something must become visible. This understanding has unsettled them. Because it means they cannot return to the same pattern and expect a different ending. They cannot ask destiny to change while refusing to change themselves. And somewhere deep inside, they know it. Stay with this moment, because another revelation is approaching. Your soulmate's promise contains something they have not fully admitted aloud. They are afraid. Not afraid of you. Afraid of how much this matters. There is a strange kind of vulnerability that arrives when someone realizes another person has become emotionally significant. Suddenly, rejection feels heavier. Timing feels important. Every word feels as though it could alter the direction of the story. Your soulmate has been wrestling with this vulnerability quietly. Part of them wants certainty before taking a step. Another part now understands that certainty often comes after courage, not before it. And this internal conflict has created a transformation. They are becoming tired of living between almost and someday. Almost speaking. Almost admitting. Almost deciding. Someday reaching out. Someday explaining. Someday becoming ready. There comes a point when someday begins to sound like another name for fear. Your soulmate has reached that point. The promise was born there. They told themselves, in whatever private words belonged to that moment, that they would stop running from what their heart had been trying to teach them. They would stop pretending indifference was strength. They would stop measuring every emotion against old disappointments. Most importantly, they would not allow their past to punish someone who did not create those wounds. That realization was enormous. Because your soulmate carries a history you may not completely know. Not necessarily a dramatic secret. Sometimes the deepest emotional history is made of ordinary disappointments repeated over years. Being misunderstood. Trusting someone and regretting it. Watching people change. Learning to protect themselves before anyone can get close enough to disappoint them. Protection eventually became habit. Habit became distance. Distance began masquerading as independence. Then you entered the story. And something about you disturbed that carefully constructed emotional system. You made them feel. Not perfectly. Not conveniently. But genuinely. That frightened them more than they wanted to admit. They may have wondered why they could not simply dismiss the connection. Why your memory returned at unexpected times. Why certain songs, places, conversations, or quiet evenings seemed to pull their thoughts toward you. Why imagining you moving forward without them created a strange heaviness they could not explain away. They thought time might reduce the intensity. Instead, time clarified it. And clarification brought responsibility. This is why the promise matters. They are no longer asking only whether they have feelings for you. They know they do. The deeper question has become whether they are brave enough to honor those feelings with actions worthy of them. And something inside them has answered. Yes. But the story is not finished there. Because making a promise privately is one thing. Keeping it when fear returns is another. Your soulmate knows this. They know there may come a moment when their old instincts whisper, wait longer. There may come a moment when pride says, let them come to you. There may come a moment when uncertainty says, what if everything goes wrong? But they have begun preparing themselves for that battle. Not against another person. Against the version of themselves that always retreats when something becomes emotionally real. This is the person they are trying to leave behind. And you must understand something about your own journey here. You were never meant to spend your life proving that you are worthy of being chosen. You were never meant to chase clarity from someone committed to confusion. You were never meant to shrink your heart so another person could remain comfortable inside their avoidance. Your value does not increase because someone finally recognizes it, and it does not decrease because someone once failed to recognize it. Perhaps this is why your own season of waiting, questioning, healing, and becoming has mattered. You have changed too. You may not notice every change because transformation often happens quietly. You simply wake up one day and realize certain things no longer attract you. Certain behavior no longer impresses you. Certain excuses no longer have the same power over you. Your standards become quieter but stronger. You stop begging situations to reveal themselves. You watch. You listen. You notice consistency. You begin understanding that peace is valuable. And your soulmate senses that something about you has shifted. This is part of what awakened them. They can feel, symbolically within this story, that you are no longer standing emotionally in the same place where they left you. You are moving, growing, becoming. And the possibility that you might continue forward without waiting for their courage has made everything suddenly real. This is not about creating panic. It is about consequence. People sometimes understand the importance of a door only when they realize it will not remain open forever. Your soulmate has begun seeing that your life has its own direction. Your future is not suspended. Your happiness is not waiting for permission. And if they want to become part of your journey, they cannot continue observing from the distance while expecting destiny to do all the work. Something must change. So they made another part of the promise. They promised they would not approach you merely to interrupt your healing. This is important. They do not want to arrive with confusion and disappear again. They do not want to stir emotions they are not prepared to handle responsibly. They are beginning to understand that entering someone's heart carries responsibility. If they come closer, they want to come with intention. And that word, intention, has become powerful inside them. Because intention requires a person to answer questions fantasy avoids. What am I offering? What am I prepared to build? What behavior must I change? Can I communicate when things become uncomfortable? Can I listen without becoming defensive? Can I remain present when vulnerability makes me want to retreat? These questions are shaping them. And there is one question they have barely been able to face. Would this person believe me if I finally told them everything? That question has made them emotional. Because they know there may be reasons you would hesitate. Perhaps they have been inconsistent. Perhaps circumstances created distance. Perhaps assumptions grew where communication should have existed. Perhaps timing simply failed both of you. Whatever the symbolic history of this connection may be, your soulmate understands that sincerity cannot demand immediate trust. Trust may need to be rebuilt slowly. And surprisingly, they are beginning to accept that. They are not expecting one grand sentence to erase everything. That is part of the seriousness. A less mature version of them might have imagined appearing with a confession and watching every problem disappear. The person emerging now understands that beautiful words may open a door, but behavior determines whether that door remains open. And this brings us to the promise you were meant to hear. In the quietest place inside themselves, your soulmate has promised that if life gives them a genuine opportunity with you, they will not treat that opportunity casually. Read that again inside your heart. Not casually. They know how rare it is to encounter someone who makes you examine yourself. Someone whose presence awakens questions. Someone whose absence teaches lessons. Someone who somehow becomes part of your inner conversation even when they are nowhere near you. Your soulmate believes you have been that kind of person. And they are beginning to understand why. It was never only about attraction. Something about this connection mirrored them back to themselves. Through you, they saw where they were courageous. Through you, they also saw where they were afraid. They saw the tenderness they had hidden. They saw the pride they used as armor. They saw how badly they wanted to be understood while simultaneously making themselves difficult to understand. That contradiction has been breaking apart. And what is underneath it is far more vulnerable. Your soulmate does not simply want you to see them as strong. They want you to know them truthfully. That desire is new. Because being admired is easy compared with being known. Being known means someone sees the uncertainty beneath confidence, the mistakes beneath good intentions, the wounds beneath distance, the hope beneath silence. And still, something inside your soulmate is saying, if there is one person I want to stop hiding from, it is them. But they have not told you the most important part yet. The promise contains a specific decision. A decision involving what they intend to do when the right moment arrives. They have rehearsed it mentally more than once. They have imagined how you might respond. Sometimes the imagined conversation goes beautifully. Sometimes they picture you becoming quiet. Sometimes they worry you will ask the exact question they are least prepared to answer. Why now? Those two words carry enormous weight. Why now? Why after all this time? Why after the confusion? Why after silence? Why after I had to learn how to stand without the certainty I wanted from you? Your soulmate knows they cannot answer that question with something shallow. They cannot simply say, I missed you. Because the truth is larger. They did miss you. But missing you was only the beginning. What changed them was understanding what your presence represented. You were not simply someone they desired. You became connected to a version of themselves they had not yet learned how to become. The honest version. The courageous version. The emotionally available version. The version that does not disappear when the heart becomes vulnerable. And now they understand something they wish they had understood earlier. Sometimes the right person does not arrive when you are fully ready. Sometimes their presence reveals exactly where you are not ready. Then life gives you a choice. Grow. Or lose what your fear refuses to hold. Your soulmate has been staring at that choice. And they made their promise. They chose growth. But listen carefully, because this fictional divine message is not telling you to put your life on hold. Quite the opposite. Keep becoming. Keep building. Keep protecting the peace you worked hard to find. Let another person's transformation belong to them. You do not need to supervise it. You do not need to rescue it. You do not need to force the story toward a particular ending. What is genuine will eventually become clear through consistency. The promise belongs to your soulmate. The responsibility to keep it belongs to them too. Your responsibility is simply to remain aligned with the dignity you discovered inside yourself. And strangely, that may be exactly what makes the next moment possible. Because your soulmate does not want to meet the version of you who waits endlessly. They need to meet the version of you who knows their worth. Only then can the connection become something chosen freely rather than something held together by fear. And your soulmate has sensed this. That is why their promise includes patience. They are beginning to understand that if they truly care, they must respect your pace too. They cannot expect you to erase every doubt immediately. They cannot arrive late and demand that your heart behave as though no time passed. They cannot ask for vulnerability while refusing accountability. Something inside them has matured enough to recognize this. Yet there is still something they are struggling to say. Something more personal than the promise itself. It concerns the moment when they first realized they were in deeper than they had admitted. The memory surprised them. Because it was not the moment they expected. It was not some dramatic encounter. It was not the most romantic conversation. It was something incredibly small. Something you probably do not even remember. But they remember. And whenever that memory returns, it does something to them. It reminds them that what they feel did not appear overnight. It was growing quietly while they were busy pretending everything was ordinary. They remember looking at you differently. Just for a second. And inside that second was a strange sense of recognition. Not certainty. Recognition. As though some part of them thought, this person could become important to me. They immediately pushed the thought away. But life has brought them back to it. Again. And again. And again. Now they understand why that memory survived. Because it was the beginning. The beginning of everything they later tried to explain away. And now, standing emotionally on the other side of all that avoidance, they have made a promise about the future. They promise that when the moment comes, they will finally tell you what that moment was. They will tell you what they noticed. What frightened them. What they wanted to say. Why they stopped themselves. And what happened afterward that made them believe they had already missed their chance. But there is something else. Something even they did not expect. Because shortly after making this promise, something happened that seemed to challenge it almost immediately. A conversation took place. Someone said something about you. Your soulmate here.